GM everyone, and welcome to Smart Contact, an interview series with the world's most influential and impactful Web3 leaders. This podcast is produced by Web3 Harbour and is supported by Circle. Like and subscribe for more Smart Contacts.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Smart Contact, produced by Web3 Harbour, series sponsored by Circle, and co-sponsored by Harbour for this one episode. So I'm Jeffrey Tchui, Executive Director of Web3 Harbour, Head of APAC Ecosystem for Harbour Foundation. I'm your host today. We're recording a live audience today with Mr. Tan Ngo, CEO of Metis, a really exciting developing chain dedicated to growing in Vietnam and globally, but out of Asia Pacific. Thank you for joining our conversation for today.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It's an honor to be here and also really get to know about the country and share what we're doing at Metis.
So you say the country, we're talking about Vietnam. Honestly, this is not your first kind of visit to Vietnam. You're Vietnamese, American. You're dedicated to this geography, this industry, like this country, and then also this industry. I'm pretty sure the audience wants to understand a little bit how you even got here, right? How does someone from Austin, Texas, Vietnamese American, make his way over to Vietnam, now leading a layer 2 blockchain?
Yeah, the funny story is I never really had any ambition to really travel outside of the US. But being in the blockchain space is such a global market that you do have to travel. Metis was really focused in Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America. Asia wasn't really a target for us until I went to Consensus in Hong Kong. That really changed my perspective of how active Asia was. I think at that time, the US regulatory bodies weren't really as proactive in crypto, and the landscape in Asia was more exciting. And seeing that, it shifted my mindset of exploring there's more than the US. It's a global economy, and Asia is really pushing the forefront. And being Vietnamese heritage, I finally really understood why there's so much excitement. A lot of the major developers of some of the most innovative projects in the blockchain space are originated from Vietnam. So from that, it just really made me push the company to really expand here. If we're not really growing and committing and even investing in areas of growth, then we're falling behind. And you see that with a lot of Web 2 companies who are already invested in Vietnam. Samsung, NVIDIA, Intel, these are some big powerhouses. And us being a technological company, we have to see it and really capture and understand why are they investing here? Why are they building here? So that's why I'm here today.
Okay, so you're leading a protocol. I'm also leading protocol growing in the ecosystem in Asia Pacific. There's a noisy space in layer 2 EVM scalability segment, as you call it, of the protocol business. What is it that separates Metis from the other like layer 2 solutions out there?
You know, that's a good question. We get asked that all the time. What makes you different? I think the key thing when you want to differentiate your people or the product is you got to understand the team. What's their motive? What's their vision? At Metis, we were conceived and concepted to really help scale out Ethereum, really scaling out the industry itself. We were one of the first L2s, so we have seen many challenges and been through many cycles of development as well. But we're more than that now. What makes us different is our team and our core value. It's easy to launch a chain nowadays where anybody can, say, hey, I want to launch an L2. But what really makes us different is the people behind it. We see the industry is more than Ethereum. It's more than Bitcoin. We've seen the technology evolve. We have investment and support of different initiatives from ZKM to the BTC liquidity infrastructure. Now we're focusing on AI. AI is a big sector that we see will really move the future, move the industry as a whole. So for us, what makes us different, and to go back to your question, is the people that are leading our team, our initiative, and our core values of why we're building in the blockchain.
What does your community actually look like? Like, who are your users? Who are your adopters? How are you structured? Like, I can say from Harbour, we've experimented. I mean, we've been around since 2019, right? So we've experimented with different governance structures, different entities, global expansion. But I think one of the benefits of being a layer 2, and especially a relatively young layer 2, is you've seen what other people have done. So what have you chosen to do? Number 2 is, again, going back to the first question, is like, because you've chosen to be the way that you are today, who are you appealing to?
Yeah, for us, we want to provide an infrastructure that is close to why blockchain was created. We were one of the first network to decentralize our sequencer. As an L2, most L2s are centralized with a single sequencer. So there's room for failure. There's room for censorship. For us, we saw that as a path, what we believe. I would say we aren't the most favorite because we were kind of pushing an area where people weren't really focusing on. But our core value is decentralization. And that leads into what we're building today with Hyperion as well. In terms of how we're structured and who are our users, I think anybody that want to build in this space that feel like some part of decentralization or decentralization is an important part of their organization or their operation or their planning, those are the people that we want to build on our network. It's easy to build, and launch a project on typical Web 2, but while you're building on Web 3, you want to have the attributes of why Web 3 is important. If not, then just build, use the AWS, just use your traditional financial systems. There's no point of building in Web 3. But if you want to have the component and the values of crypto or blockchain, verify transparency as well, then you can build on us. But investing and building in our network really highlights like our true intention of why we're here in the space.
So does that help you with your kind of focus towards Vietnam? Like how are you running partnerships here? If you have that very specific kind of like narrative mindsets, again, I'll go back to the word structure, right? So if you're structured to be successful in a place like Vietnam, how are you then leveraging that to like build your partnerships and then build your products and then build your adoption, grow the ecosystem, I guess?
Yeah, for us, we see the talent pool here is amazing. Some of the biggest projects, their dev teams are based in Vietnam. I've spoken to many protocols, big names as well, and they always have a team in Vietnam. And for a foundation or a network, you want to be close to the builders. You want to build the trust. You want to support them as builders. So how do you do that? You get closer to them. And being locally in the region helps build that relationship, helps build that rapport, which helps, trust. Builders can build on any network, but if you're working closely with the developers and they trust you, they see your value, then you really build a developer community. And one of the hardest thing about infrastructure nowadays is like, how do you bring people into your ecosystem, right? Incentives, the culture, the hype, or good products. I think having good product is a key component for any successful ecosystem.
Talk about incentives. Tell me about like your support programs. And then how's it focused towards growing in APAC?
We see supporting builders on a global scale. We currently have a hyper hack, which is focused on AI and utilizing our Hyperion testnet currently and building on Laz AI, which is our AI application infrastructure that we're incubating and supporting closely. So in terms of like development, we open it on a global scale, but we have very strong acceleration and incubation partners here in Vietnam that have been supporting us. And the way they have contributed has been extremely valuable to us to also learn about the teams here and their capabilities. So with that in mind, we do see the talent, we've seen the results, and that's how we're really, really supporting the builders here. Beyond just kind of the capital rewards and support on these hackathons, we have a deeper connection to these builders. We've tried to provide them with guidance, some of our experience from the business side to resource as well on a global scale. Metis is a global company with global partners and global resource. And being a builder in Vietnam, sometimes those are a little bit limited because not a lot of people are putting eyes or focus on Vietnam. But for us being a global partner, we can build that trust. We can bridge that gap to help the builders locally. And we do see the talent. It's just they need the stage to shine and really showcase the talent here.
So how does the talent actually get access to like support from Metis? And then specifically, like what are you really looking for in terms of decentralized applications? What is the growth narrative? AI, DeFi, and then what does it mean to be like an AI and DeFi layer 2 in Vietnam?
For us, we see that, we want to have the creative minds really use our infrastructure and create whatever they feel. We don't want to build everything. We want to build and provide the infrastructure for them to build what they would like to build without limitation. AI is a big sector now, and you can't really ignore it. It's really taken over the tech industry. I've been to CES 2025. I went to the mobile conference in Spain. Everything is AI. Everything we're doing, everything we're touching. And if any companies is not touching AI, I think they will fall behind in some capacity. And for us, we do see it. I wouldn't say we're putting all our eggs in one basket, but we're putting a lot of resource in the AI sector. And I think what we're doing with AI and the blockchain, will really support in a tangible way the basic infrastructure of why blockchain could really support AI.
Hyper-narrative is that AI needs blockchain, blockchain needs AI, mainly because of the fact that trust is an issue, provenance is an issue, accountability, and et cetera. What is your product or what is your solution targeting? Like what pain point of that value chain of the AI plus Web3 narrative are you really addressing with Metis?
For us, we see the basic foundation of any kind of application is data. How clean is your data? Where's your data coming from? How are you verifying your data? Like I said, blockchain is about transparency, right? And understanding of what we can do and what we can see. I think one of the things about AI is you don't know who contributed to this data. You look at news now, you don't know what news is real, what news is fake. How do you verify that, right? That's information. How do you verify information? And data is such a big, I wouldn't say it's an asset class, but it's becoming one. You think about Facebook, Google, they give you free access to some of their services, but it's not free. They're collecting your data. So in terms of like how we're using AI now from business decision, from the government level, from research, all that plays into, the outcome of the results of why we're using AI. Imagine trying to come up with a business plan or a model or a trading model that you have wrong data. That completely really affects what your end goal is, why you're using AI. I think one of the things is even like when you're doing research for product review, you don't know what's real, what's fake, right? It could be manipulated. It could be influenced. Even in big pharmaceutical, I would say industry. If you're doing research and all this research is actually influenced by some of these companies, so what is truth? What is transparency? And that comes to why blockchain can really support the AI side. We're talking about a lot of, high tech, high speed, but none of it can really beat what blockchain can bring for AI is verifiability.
I've always known Metis as a DeFi, like layer 2 previously, I would imagine, now focusing very heavily on the DeFi primitives, right? And all the different ecosystems, components that you needed to build out to actually reach that functionality and capability. Now with artificial intelligence coming in, it's almost like you need provenance, trust, transparency, traceability. But DeFi in and of itself is supposed to be pseudo-anonymous, fully anonymous. How do those two narratives kind of come together, right?
Yeah, I think in terms of DeFi was what really pushed the industry forward. But I think right now, DeFi is complex and people see it. And with more change, there's more complexity. There's more, I would say, fragmentation. What AI is doing is creating an environment where it removes the complexity. Hey, AI agent, facilitate a trade for me on the best pools. And you see that with some of the interesting products, even by Hey Anon, which is built by a pretty well-known DeFi, I would say, developer as well. So in terms of AI, it really makes DeFi usable on the consumer level. I would say, one of the argument points, what you mentioned earlier is like, does blockchain need AI or AI needs blockchain? I think AI will utilize blockchain. AI doesn't need blockchain, but blockchain plays a very strong, I would say, role in what we're achieving today in terms of traditional finance. And with AI, it's making everything more simple. And with that, with data as well, going back to data, you need to know where your data is coming from always. And for me, it's hard to really sort through things and really find out what's truth and not truth.
Yeah, and we were talking about this earlier. I think perhaps humans are not meant to use DeFi products at scale because of the nature of it. It's like 24/7 trading, is lots of disintermediation. And I think the biggest issue that why our financial systems in Web 2 are structured the way they are is because trust is an issue. So you put a lot of gates, risk control measures for reporting purposes, right? For compliance. But in DeFi, you don't have a lot of these intermediary kind of components. I think regulators struggle with that because you can turn things on and off. There's levers and there's controls that you can kind of monitor and track and trace and supervise and regulate. In DeFi, you don't have that. And so now you're introducing artificial intelligence to have more efficient trade automation, probably the ability for users that have complexity, understanding, onboarding to DeFi are able to actually use DeFi better. Is that really moving us into the right direction, do you think? Like in terms of, let's just go back to Vietnam real quick. Yeah. So how does Vietnam even think about regulating something like this? Should they allow it to be kind of like a new frontier of different activities that should be explored without constraint and then seeing how we can put guardrails against it? Or is it a situation where Vietnam should just wait and see what other jurisdictions do?
I think if I was part of the decision-making team in leading the Vietnam initiative, I think I would have to look at different case studies. Like you at Web3 Harbour, you guys are talking to a lot of projects. You work with a regulatory body. So you hear the challenges and you're trying to find a solution. I think in Vietnam, they also have to really open their eyes and really see the different framework and see what works with the country laws and compliance side. I think that's the key thing. With not many case studies, you don't really know what the results are. You're kind of hypothetically, I would say, portraying or actually predicting what could or could not happen. And the thing about DeFi and crypto landscape, it's highly sensitive. It's irreversible sometimes. So a large capital mistake for any entity or big organization in the country could be catastrophic. So in terms of like how they should approach it, I think maybe reviewing different frameworks from different countries or different discussion, talking to projects and people who are expert in this field to really assess the risk, right? But the thing is, I don't think they should wait, because if you want to be in the forefront, every country is exploring this. I can say that. The US is pushing this industry forward and also a big powerhouse. So if they're really adopting this and BTC does become I won't say a weaponized, but an asset that really can shift the balance in trade, then it's something that has to be considered from a country perspective. If it's an asset class like gold, right, and a deficit for each country, it's also being considered of how this could be, I would say, neutralized with BTC.
Sorry to interrupt, but I want to tell you about our smart contract lead sponsor, Circle.
What is Circle?
At Circle, we're building a digital dollar that brings the power of the internet to money.
Circle's the place where crypto meets stability,
where local businesses meet global customers.
and the US dollar meets USDC.
Meet Circle.
Thank you to all of our sponsors and community partners. Now back to the conversation.
How's your experience been like when you're trying to communicate this to, different elements, policymakers, public officials, People's Committee? I mean, there was a great meeting today with the People's Committee, and then different representatives from Da Nang City, and some of the initiatives around, forming an IFC, focusing on semiconductors, plus then expanding a lot of the schemes and programs that are meant to support those kind of Web 2 industries for innovation are then extended over to Web 3 as well. So it's really exciting stuff. I think there's a lot of areas that are still kind of up in the air in terms of VATP, licensing regime activities, and then also what kind of support should be really given and what a structure of a sandbox would actually look like. So anyways, getting back to the point is, what has your experience been like? Because you've been here for a few months now. This is something that you want to do long term here in Vietnam. Yeah. Any kind of key takeaways? Have you looked at other jurisdictions? Like, I mean, come on, you can be honest here. Yeah.
We, from the Metis side, we see growth and some amazing stats from the Vietnam, just the country itself. It's pretty interesting. They have the second, I would say they rank number 2 in global crypto adoption for the country compared to their population, more so than the US. Alone in November 2024, it's what I got the stats from, there's over 70 billion in trading volume, number 2, which is huge. So to really see the country, it's naturally adopting crypto in its own way. And if the regulatory and the government regime is not really taking a handle on that, then, it's kind of happening organically. So, but if the country needs clarity, it's extremely important for any industry and companies that are building. A fifth of the population holds crypto. That's huge. That's huge. That's more than some countries alone. So in terms of like, how has it been? I think it's been great. It's great to feel the energy and actually the shift in mindset of what they're trying to achieve. I think they have one of the most comprehensive blockchain crypto framework plan out of all the APAC region at the moment. And actually being here and talking to some of the local representative that's guiding the country through the framework, I feel really confident that, they want to succeed. They want to have clarity for the projects, the country as well. So my experience has been great, I would say. And being able to also speak the language, right? Some of this lingo is still foreign, right? What is blockchain? What is DeFi? So it makes it a little bit easier and it helps build trust. So I think that's one advantage that I have been able to really utilize, even though my Vietnamese isn't amazing, but it's good enough to really communicate and explain in a way to help some of the regulatory bodies that are really developing this.
Yeah, it was very interesting because I think one of the biggest things for any successful jurisdiction who's looking to be a hub, be a leader, be an active participant in this wave of frictionless finance or this next wave of Web3 adoption, listening or active listening is extremely important. You and I probably around looking for different jurisdictions to actually operate in, right, as a Web3 company on the foundation and on the protocol level. We probably run into a lot of countries or a lot of regulators and a lot of policymakers who pretend to listen. And then some who are actually wanting to be your partner through that process. So it's good to actually be here in Vietnam, actually be able to participate in a lot of open forum roundtables, as well as communications and discourse and conversations. I think always having that is always the good first step. But a way to disseminate a lot of the feedback is also important, right? I think in Hong Kong, many of our most famous Web3 companies originated, started, founded, scaled in Hong Kong. And then there was a 180 in the policy right before COVID. The rest is history. Now, Singapore got a lot of traction. Then the UAE kind of just ran away with basically all of the progressive innovation and ability to support Web3 companies properly. And I think Vietnam has the ability to actually look at how that entire narrative actually transpired and then pick the pieces that they want to actually be involved and focused on. You know, another thing we were talking about. So this is just like policy. I think what we can also talk about is the physical state of the infrastructure of Vietnam. It's interesting that you choose to live in Da Nang, right? Because coming to Vietnam for Web3 business as Hedera in the past and Hedera's ecosystem, I've always gone to Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon, or to Hanoi. Mainly because, you know, one of the regulators are in one place and then also the business is in another place. But this whole concept of the physical infrastructure being already developed, meaning the cities are laid out in a certain way, the resources are planned, and the city planning is done in a certain way. And then just hearing about this IFC and then also a lot of other physical investment into the city for the adoption of something like Web3 is quite like spectacular, unique, right? So does that change the way that you look at why you choose Da Nang? And why did you choose Da Nang is actually I'm trying to understand.
I have a family here. Never thought Da Nang would be the place where there was crypto development. I was here for an event, and my intention and my goal was maybe I can help the city expand. The People Commission was speaking at one of the events here, and I was like, you know what? I want to support that. And having the experience to support something like this from the ground level is actually really fulfilling, actually helping to build something tangible and see it succeed, and actually seeing your contribution be reviewed and respected. I think that's one thing. I really like the region because I feel like the more time I commit in terms of like results can be exponential. Why? Because there is a need. There's a mandate for the city to thrive. There is investment into the local areas, the research park as well. So you see the commitment, you see how fast they're moving. So the energy is great. And if you're moving and you're fast paced, I feel like there's a lot that can be accomplished. Even though, say, Vietnam regulatory crypto guidance or perspective might be behind in some maybe major countries, but the way they're moving, I see them surpassing a lot of countries as well, which is exciting for me. That's why I really like it's the people that you work with. As long as the government bodies here show and continue that commitment and really think about the long term of the city and the country, I think I'm here to stay and support as much as possible. Not because just it's Vietnam, but it's I think from a global industry, you could be anywhere in the APAC region and still have, you know, global impact. The global market for crypto itself is astronomical and it's growing. It's not slowing down. It's not going away. You see, you know, the capital size of Bitcoin, Ethereum as well. It's growing. And if the country doesn't really adopt it or doesn't really understand it, then they might be missing on a lot of capital resource, which actually moves the world. It affects many things in the country. So I think it's extremely important to stay persistent and provide the people locally with the experience that you may have seen and you've been working through for the last couple of years, myself as well, to help them really stay on track and avoid any kind of missteps as much as possible.
Do you think Da Nang can actually attract more investment than Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi for Web3 companies?
I think for the city itself, it really needs to highlight the lifestyle. Either one, it's incentivization. Two, capital commitment from parties that also believe in and seeing the same kind of initiative as well. Or, from the city perspective, I know there's support on, location, support on tax break, but I'm not sure if that will move the needle enough. But the city itself has a great lifestyle. It has a great culture. So in terms of recruiting talent, I think that's one thing that city needs to really highlight. It's the accessibility of all this stuff. But in terms of like, do I develop here in Hong Kong, Singapore, or Da Nang? I think it comes down to the type of support and are those incentives good enough? I think it's a start, but I would love to see more of a comprehensive plan to really hear the needs of, say, a Web3 company, what they really need to really attract the talent, what the city wants. Attract talent, evolve this AI, fintech, semiconductor initiative in the city.
So clarity, support. I mean, it can't always be perfect. And this is the relationship at the end of the day, right? You choose to live somewhere, you're working with city people, policymakers, you have partners regionally in the region, in the country. I mean, I've gone through this exercise a couple of times as well, right? There must have been things that keep you up at night, things that weren't perfect, some frustrations that you might have had. Maybe I'll give one, then you can like bounce off that one. I used to try to find the ability to bring my team into Vietnam, but because it's crypto is a very global business, right? You have people from all over different places. And just the most basic thing of having to get a visa to come into the country to do a meeting. And then sometimes your visa doesn't get approved in time before the meeting actually is in a short notice. That's actually quite problematic, especially for an industry like ours that runs at the pace of like hours, not days or weeks or months. And so maybe that's one example on my side. But for your side, like if you set up here, is it easy for you to open a bank account? Being VitQ, is it like, do you get extra like status benefits or whatever until you get more support from the government? Like, tell me about that.
I think from my experience, they are considering and supporting, say, dual citizenship. I hold an American passport, of course, but opening a bank account, there's still uncertainties. I don't have clarity. I think that's one thing that maybe we can highlight as the city and the country is developing and trying to attract talent as well. I don't have any issues traveling around APAC region, so I don't really have the challenge of getting a visa, but I do hear a lot of people having a challenge of getting a visa and traveling and having uncertainty on the visa. It's a big bottleneck for any company, right? They want to have an international hub. They want to maybe travel freely. I think even with Korea and some of these other countries as well, I don't think they have a solution for that. Even the US, you think about the US, right? You need a visa if you're coming from Asia, no matter what. So in terms of making that visa application side, it's definitely something to consider. I know the country also said or announced they have a golden visa, but the details I'm not quite clear about. But in terms of international, creating a hub for the region, I think freely traveling between Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea, Thailand to Vietnam should be fairly easy.
Tell me about your actual physical plans in Vietnam. You set up an office, you're gonna hire some people. What are you gonna do? Like hold the IP here? You're gonna have a separate entity for different things? Like what's your plan?
For us, we do see the talent. We are focused on AI, and there's a lot of, I would say, development teams here. Our focus with an office here is to really just start easing into the local environment of the talent, seeing what talent is available, what we can maximize on. I wouldn't say the talent is cheap, but the cost of living here is a lot lower, but the talent is extremely high. So we have a little bit more flexibility of investing into the talent, seeing how that goes. But for us, for Metis, we do see the AI and development side is very important. And the talent here is definitely where we can scale quickly. And being a startup for a lot of companies, I think that's very important. Because if you hire talent from other countries, it's extremely expensive and it's highly competitive. My perspective of like, why do I want to invest my time in this region is the teams here, I could have a team of maybe 10 talent compared to 2 in, say, another country. And there's no way you can outpace 10 developers that are highly trained and equally as talent. There's no way. So to be competitive in this space, I think it's all about efficiency, cost efficiency, and also from a business decision standpoint, right? I think that's why you see different talents move different part of the business in different regions, from China to manufacturing, and Vietnam is becoming a global manufacturing hub. I think Nintendo Switch 2 is developed created here. 80% of Samsung's high-end phone is what I've been told, is produced here in Vietnam as well. So in terms of like investment, talent, the capabilities, you can't beat Vietnam at the moment, I would say.
I just don't want to get into geopolitical stuff, but one of the reasons why that is the case was because the first round of the Trump administration made it very difficult for Chinese manufacturing to be competitive, and hence why a lot moved to Vietnam. Now, technically, currently, with the next round of current economic tariffs, the effective trade rate or the tariff rate is actually lower for China than it is for Vietnam. So it might be quite difficult for that narrative to continue. However, I do believe the long term, because just the market structure of China and its focus. But I think for the next few years, there's challenges, but also many opportunities from a Web3 and AI perspective for Vietnam to really, really excel. Because I think through this challenge, there will be different, let's say, white spaces that we can actually provide. One of the things that I've looked at is from even on our protocol side is like, how do you deal with real world asset tokenization? How do you provide trade finance liquidity, invoice kind of tokenization, etc. And then also for AI, obviously we all know that AI semiconductors is extremely, extremely important, but the way that semiconductors are made through lithography and then also its production, the current way it's being done is heavily US centric or heavily Western centric. And so I think Vietnam has a lot of different opportunities to figure that out. And the other thing too is with rare earth metals, right? So electrification and whatnot, all the abilities to tokenize those assets can be something that Vietnam can focus on. But anyways, I guess going back, if you had, as we close out with this, like maybe 1 or 2 wishes. I'm not even ask you the crystal ball question. I'm just gonna ask you if you had 1 or 2 wishes, what would those be? Specifically for your focus here in Vietnam, or just in general for Metis to be successful?
I think having more clarity on the regulatory landscape and also maybe the projection as well. Us as a company, if we're investing resource, capital resource, human resource, any kind of resource in a country or opening an office here, we want to know what it looks like in 5 years, 10 years, right? And we want to have almost more certainties. I know it changes with different political parties, but for us to invest in so much time, talent, resource for maybe 2 years of clarity, that's not enough. So if you want to drive real capital, real investment, and real talent to the country and the city as well, clarity is one of the most important things. And make it easy to attract talent, making it easy to, I would say, travel to and from. Of course, following kind of what the maybe guidelines of the country, of course, for travel, but making it a little bit easier to attract talent. I think even in the US, right, they made it really easy for talent from India to really enter the US. Will Vietnam do the same? That would be great to see, like, hey, if you're a Web3 developer, you have the talent to really verify that, we welcome you with maybe special, I would say, visas. That would be great to see.
I am super bullish about Vietnam. Like you, I really want to figure out how to return to our roots. But at the same time, it's just seeing in the industry the direction it's going and all the support that's being given by just the local government here and then over the national government. I think is reminiscent of a lot of the state planning programs that I've seen in other countries like, mainland China, etc., that really give you that kind of 5-year, 10-year outlook so that you can plan your business around. So again, very excited. I want to thank you for sharing all of your insights and talking about Metis. This has been, again, our first international recording of Smart Contacts. And yeah, I wish we can do more. So thank you. And yeah, let's figure out how to build a vibrant ecosystem in Vietnam.
Thank you, Jeff. It was great to be here.
Thanks so much.